James, welcome to the podcast. You sat today with myself, Dave Gibbons, and Ian Macbeth. Welcome, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
No worries, mate. No worries. So, one of the reasons that we wanted to get yourself on, I've been following you for a long time now. We've got some mutual friends. I know Ian has, and I'm not sure if you still do them now, but you used to do an amazing live call in the mornings. Can you just give us an explanation as to what were these calls all about? What were you trying to achieve from these calls that you did in
Mm.
the mornings?
So I did two big things. I started two big things during COVID when we first went into lockdown. One of them was the call 7:45 to 8 o'clock. And
Yeah.
originally I was doing these every day. Now, if you remember, the Facebook algorithm, well, for most social platforms, became overly generous during COVID because not many people were spending on advertising and marketing.
Yeah.
So everything blew up, everything started to really accelerate. And that's what happened with these Facebook live sessions. They were all just centered around personal development and mindset. Like I said, originally we had a lot more time during COVID.
Yeah.
It was 7:45 to 8 every day. And the reach was incredible really quickly. So we ended up reaching on average 16,000 people a day with each session.
Wow.
And with the different users over the week, wow, it was really hitting a big audience. And they were literally designed just to give people that little bit of strength and stability that a lot of people needed during that time when we were
Yeah.
all locked in our houses.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, were there did you notice that there was a particular type of person that was turning up because of the content you were putting out, or did you find that it was kind of a mix of every? What were the type of people that were coming and turning up to these live calls in the morning? What type of people were they? Were they general public, business people? What was it? Who were clicking on these type of links? And the next question is, I wonder why. What was the things that you were seeing, the conversations were happening?
So it was general public. There wasn't just business owners. I did run this through one of my companies is a business coaching company. I ran it through that page, but it definitely wasn't just business owners turning up. There was people from all walks of life. And I really struggled with this. So I'm a big marketing nerd. And one of the first golden rules in marketing is know your target market.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out who's the demographic here, who's the kind of person that's showing up, because
yeah,
it was literally all shapes and sizes. So why were they showing up? I think timing was probably a great thing. Like I said, some people found that lockdown period of COVID an absolute dream because they were getting paid, they didn't have to go and work, and they were probably breaking the rules and still going to see
yeah,
people. There were others that really struggled, and I think it was a nice mixture of people had more time
yeah,
and there was that little bit of a concern around mental health, wasn't there, at the time? So I
yeah.
think those two created this beautiful combination, and they were the ingredients to the cake, really.
Amazing.
I wonder whether because I felt a lot of people that were furloughed that weren't working. I was starting a business at the time, so I was sat right here as we are today, kind of beavering away like normal. But I felt a lot of people lost the habits, and because you were consistent with it, and they say, being boringly consistent is sometimes the ultimate strength. And I'm not saying your call was boring, but it was the same time every time. That habit was there.
Yeah.
And because it wasn't boring, and because it kind of got people into a habit and something they could follow and know it was going to be there the next day, I wonder whether that built the momentum with it, because I knew, I was aware, I was kind of like, okay, that calls on. If you needed that little pump in the morning, you could log on, and James was there kind of, in and around. Sort of normally I'd get the notification after you'd gone live and I'd watch the rerun of it. But it was a habit that was built into certain people's kind of days, which that was really missing. And as we talk about peak performance, I just wonder how important as a coach habits are to people. Are you kind of a fan of or not a fan of?
Major fan of, yeah, for sure. That consistency. So again, if we just turn back to marketing, I'll stop bringing it back to marketing. But one of the guys considered number one in the world is Seth Godin, wrote about 1,000 bestsellers in that space. And he writes, one of the big things he talks about in his books is how consistent he is with his newsletter and his emails that go out. He writes one every single day without fail and has done for something crazy like 5,000 days. Jeffrey Gitomer, the self-confessed king of sales, but he's got the best-selling sales book of all time, The Little Red Book of Selling. Same thing. He was going live every single day. at a really random time, something like 3:57 p.m. Now I only found those out after I'd been, but it was kind of like this serendipity, this moment of, okay, this is why this is getting so much attention. Potentially is because of this level of consistency. And I think one of the biggest things that I see through people who are struggling to perform is a lack of consistency for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of that word, consistency habits. Consistency won't guarantee success, but I can guarantee if you're not consistent, you won't be successful.
I love that. Yeah, I like that.
So true though, so true. And it's not just business, but fitness, relationships. I talk a lot about my kind of magic trilogy, which is finance, health, and wealth. That's kind of my kind of thing that I'm driven to. And all three need different types of efforts and a different type of Ian really in each three. But that consistency is vital for all of them. It really is.
Yeah, you're on the way.
It's massive. So what are obviously you've been you've been in a privileged position that you've been able to speak to hundreds, if not thousands of people and help hundreds, if not thousands of people as well. I went to one of your events recently over in Birmingham, the Master Your Life event, thought it was fantastic with my wife. So I suppose one of the questions that I've got for yourself, James, is what are the main things that you see as a coach that we're doing the general public and it's holding us back? What are we missing? What's that? What are these small ingredients that we could be adding in to our lives to stop us falling into these traps of bad mental health, bad environments, feeling a bit shit about ourselves and everything else? What, in your opinion, are the things that most people seem to be missing this little trick here, or aren't there any?
Oh, there's definitely some. When it comes to the business coaching company, so I'll answer that in two different aspects. One in business, two generally for the general public who aren't business owners. But it's a really common question that get asked when we're onboarding a new client. And we've worked with over 300 different industries, over 1,000 businesses. So like you said, Dave, it's just really, really regular. And
Yeah,
you would have to be blind not to see patterns of people that fail and struggle, and patterns of people that do really well.
Yeah.
Most common question we get asked is, what do I need to do, James, to succeed? This is from those guys that are really keen, right? What do I need to do in order to succeed on this program? Is there a certain industry? Is there a certain location? Is there a certain X, Y, or Z secret that will help me get further forward? And it's like there's no specific industry that seems to do better than others. We've got lots of people in the same industry and the results vary. There's no specific part of the world that you need to be in to perform better than anybody else. The one key thing, and I could group together the A players, the guys that just not only have had these major results. Well, one of these guys, 12-year-old company, turned over multi-millions. And in their second year with us, they grew by 9,600% net profit as well.
Wow.
You group these guys together, we had these incredible results and do it consistently. And there's one pattern, and it's really obvious. They turn up to everything.
Mm-hmm.
They do the goals each session. They complete this coaching sheet before the session. They're never late. And they can sit at that table. It's a really high-performing table where you can say, yes. Yes to what? Yes, I've completed the goals. Yes, I got here on time. Yes, I did what I said I was going to do. And yes, basically going right back to Ian's point, yes, I'm consistent.
Yeah.
That is by far the number one pattern. Those guys that are just high performers, do what they said they was going to do, far outgrow everybody else by a long way.
Wow.
So the second aspect that I see then from the general public when they're not business owners, it's probably quite linked. I see people struggle when they drift. Some people drift into a relationship, drift through a career, they drift to the weekend, their bank balance keeps drifting back down to zero. They're drifting all the way through life. And what I mean by that is it's like everything's an accident.
Yeah.
It's like everything's accidental. How they feel, almost everything is an accident. And again, those that I see do really well, whether they're a business owner or whether they're employed, are really deliberate.
Yeah.
They don't drift. That's probably the biggest difference.
Okay. Based on that, drifting, it sounds to me like lack of a decent plan.
Mhm.
When you drift, you tend to end up here, there, everywhere because you're just letting the flow of life take you, if that makes sense. There's
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey in his Green Lights book, and he talks about just being floating naked in the river, going down, and that's just life taking me and being, oh, I've got trees hitting me and all kinds of shit. And that's what it sounds like. So do you think that, because you didn't say this, do you think that one of the things that affecting people is potentially lack of a plan, lack of a decent plan? And what does that decent plan kind of look like?
Well, it starts with what you want, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It starts with getting really clear on what you want. And like I said at Master Life at Symphony Hall, there's a great story on this from Jim Rohn. And he's in the Denny's. Jim Rohn, for those that don't know, is like the godfather of personal development. And he's in this Denny's, this restaurant in America. And the waitress that serves him is fantastic. She's charismatic. She did what she said she was going to do. She was on time. She was polite. Brilliant. So he says to her, "Can I ask you a question?" And she says, "Sure, go for it." And he says, "How much time each week outside of this job are you spending working on the opportunity that's going to change the life of you and your family?" And she says, "Oh, well, I don't know what that opportunity is, so I'd have to say none." And he says, "Oh, that might be the most important question anyone ever asks you. Let me ask you the second. If you don't know what the opportunity is, how much time each week are you spending trying to figure it out?" And she says, "No, none, never thought about it." I.e., she was drifting. And he says, "Well, they're the two most important questions anyone ever going to ask. And how would you explain that to your family? No, I don't know what the opportunity is that's going to change our life. And no, I'm not looking."
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is, first, get really, really clear on what you want. And there's great books on this. The Hindus have a phrase called dharma, and your dharma is almost like this. The closest translation is finding your purpose.
Yeah.
And that's split into three areas. What do you like? What do you love doing? What do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? And how can you use it to serve others? And there's a book called Ikigai, same thing, a very, very similar principle. When you can find these four areas, what you like, what you're good at, what can make money, etc., and how do you serve others? Now we're on the right tracks. So if there's people out there thinking, well, I don't know what my big goal is, I don't know what my North Star is, that's great. Not everybody does, especially not on day one, especially if you're in your 20s. That's what your 20s is for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Figuring that out. Spend the whole decade figuring out it's be worth it.
Yeah.
But you've got to spend some time. You've got to carve some time aside, make the time. The time won't just jump in your lap. You've got to make the time to sit down and figure out, what is it that I want? And you might not know in day one, week one, but in a year, there's a good chance you'll know. 10 years, you almost definitely know. Yeah. And it's worth spending that time figuring it out, because the number one thing that's going to shape your whole destiny.
Yeah. And what else do you do in that time?
Do you think people that are the classic drifters, as you call them, I call it kind of being stuck in your comfort zone? And do you think those are the people that indefinitely will struggle with that unless there's a major shift, something outside of their control that happens to them, death, medical, career change, something out of their control, just bang, happens to them? But those drifters versus the people that are effectively searching, even if they don't know, but they're actively searching, I would imagine more opportunity is going to arrive their ways. They're opening more doors because they're being effectively proactive with life rather than reactive with life. And they'll find it. You just know that that person, they don't quite know what they're going to do yet, but they're going to find it because they're pushing through doors rather than kind of just sitting in the same room. It's quite interesting because I've got two young daughters. I've got a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And when you were talking about the kind of vision and the drifter versus someone that's quite active, the 2-year-old has got every single day, my 2-year-old has got a purpose, and that's to be like the 7-year-old. So she will achieve every milestone and has done faster because she's driven to be the 7-year-old, whereas the 7-year-old doesn't have that older person other than her parents. So she's quite happy to kind of chill and watch a bit more telly. Whereas the 2-year-old is like, right, I need to get the cookie on the top of the worktop. I've seen my big sister get up there before. I'm going to carry a chair across. I'm going to climb up. I'm going to get the cookie. Bang. I walk in the room. She's got a cookie. That wasn't the attitude of 7-year-old at the time. So it sometimes it's just having that goal you just don't know what result you're going to get from it, but the goal is going to be achieved because you've got that kind of big purpose. And you see it in kids all the time, I think, and it's quite interesting when you kind of look at kids because they've got no agenda behind what they're trying to do, whereas obviously we go into adult life and that can be very quickly filtered, put in a hamster wheel and put in your comfort zone, which I think is the worst place to be for most people. I don't know if you'd agree.
For sure, yeah. I think you're absolutely spot on with the declaration of it's usually, not always, there's obviously always exceptions to the rule, but it's usually when something big happens that people get that paradigm shift. It's usually when they get fired, they broke up with, someone passes, they nearly passed. The amount of near-death experience that have caused a massive change in someone's outlook and perspective is through the roof. So unfortunately, yeah, sometimes it takes that. But it can just take one good book. Read one good book. That can absolutely create the paradigm shift. Although, I don't think it's such a bad thing that sometimes it comes from pain. We have this weird connotation with the word problem, don't we? And specifically in the Western world, more so in the UK than the US and Canada, etc. But imagine if your teacher called you into, the kids teacher, not your teacher, the kids teacher called you into parents' evening and you sat down with them and they said, we've got some news, this is pretty big. So last year, what's your 7-year-old called in, just the first name?
Grace.
So imagine if they said, this year, we've only been able to give Grace 99 problems. Not the time for the Jay-Z song. She's been able to deal with 99 problems this year, that's it. But the good news is, next year, we've got better technology, better teachers, and better processes and systems. Next year, we're going to be able to give her 299 problems. You'd be like, brilliant. She's going to get so much further faster. But that's when it's math problems. All we're trying to do as parents is stop our kids from having problems, but that's where they learn. That's where they have these light bulb moments, and that's where they start seeing things different. Actually, problems are not such a bad thing. And if you look at most of the great people in history, from Mother Teresa all the way through to Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali, all the greats, they have suffered more than just about everybody else.
Yeah.
They have suffered the most, but also they've had the greatest impact. And you're absolutely right. Some people would prefer to stay in the comfort zone. And one of the exercises that we regularly do, this is in our business coaching company, is at the end of the year, we get people to reassess and then set the vision for the next year. And one of the exercises we do is get them to write down the top 5 achievements. Mm-hmm. And everyone's achievements are different. And we do say to them, don't put your kids on there because kids are number one for us all, right?
Yeah.
Everything by the kids, top 5 achievements. Second task is write the story. What happened to make this into the top 5? And the third thing is write the emotion that you feel now about that achievement and that story. The achievements are always different. The stories are always remarkably similar. I decided what I wanted. I went for it and it got really, really hard. I had to overcome some big objections, some big hurdles, but I did it.
Yeah.
Got the thing. And the emotion that they almost always feel is pride. I was really proud of myself.
Yeah.
So if there's anyone watching thinking, oh, he said suffer, he said problems, I'm not so keen on that. I promise you, suffering and problems are coming in your life anyway.
Yeah.
But one day, if you go for gold and you overcome the challenges, one day there's a great chance that this thing that you're just thinking now, this little idea you're having now, and where you want to take it, you'll be able to look back and say, that's in my top 5 and I'm really proud of myself for achieving that. That's worth it. The alternative of that is staying in your comfort zone and nothing grows there.
Yeah. No,
I think there are people. It's such I'm quite analytical, but I'm a big people watcher. I like to kind of just see how people react to certain things. And what you're talking about there for the demographic of this podcast or this group, most people are kind of, they've either got young kids or somewhere in that kind of late 20s to sort of almost 50 odd is kind of our demographic. So they're in that parent bit where I'd say they're typically relatively wealthy in context, but they're really time poor is where a lot of people are our demographic. I don't want to use the word middle age, but middle age. Let's just call it middle age. They're kind of this graph. If you
Not
look
wrong
at
with middle-aged, mate.
look, I'm embracing it. I'm proud of it. You know, you're talking about feelings. I'm proud. I got to middle age. I'm quite happy where I am. 40. I'm as healthy as I've ever been and as wealthy as I've ever been. So I've got a lot more to achieve, but I'm quite happy with it. So I'm going to embrace it. Let's just say that's the group. But a lot of those people, the word problem is really interesting to me because as a problem solver, dare I say it, maybe I've got a little bit of that kind of white knight syndrome that people talk about. Whereas if someone's in need, I find myself drawn to try and support and help, even at the detriment sometimes of my own time or goals. Whereas a lot of people they'll look at a problem and they'll crumble. And I look at two family members, two very, in my circle, very close two family members. I won't say who, but whenever there's a micro problem, it's a massive problem. And I'm like, well, it's not that big a deal. You just do this, you fix it. But those two different mindsets, I just wonder from your point of view as a coach, you must see both. You must see someone that loves a challenge, loves a problem, almost get off on a problem. And then you see someone else that goes, well, this happened yesterday and that resulted in that meeting going late and that's going to affect me down. And it's like the world has ended for because you were late for 15 minutes in traffic. How do you ever and can you ever coach someone out of the negative connotation? Or is that just DNA? Is that just who they are?
You definitely can coach someone out of it. The observation that there's some people that love a challenge and, oh yes, let's move forward and progress, versus those people that don't like a challenge and catastrophize and sort of collusion. I think one of the biggest reasons that mental health is such a big topic right now is collusion. It's not the only reason. There's a lot going on in the world that's causing so many mental health challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be stating the obvious if I started reeling them off. But one of the ones that people don't talk about very often is collusion. We had a guy who, on average, he'll put something on Facebook, just something about his family or whatever, and he might get 10, 20 likes on that post. There was a time when he was going through a rough spot and he put a post on saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm suicidal. I'm struggling with mental health. I'm this, I'm that. And the post was long and it got 570 likes. Those 570 likes were all secondary gains. So there's a real balance, isn't there, between talking and opening up about it, but then, oh no, these secondary gains might be keeping you there. They might be keeping you in the pain. That takes some real self-awareness to know which one's which. My advice on that for anybody that is really struggling, by the way, is definitely talk, but talk to someone that knows what they're doing. Brenda next door, she might not give you the best advice. She might not know what she's doing in terms of this conversation. It might also add a massive weight to her. If, be plonking that weight on her, especially if you turn around and go, don't think I want to be here anymore. Boom. She doesn't have the skills, the mindset, or the tools to deal with that. But there are a lot of people that are. So go and see therapists, counselors, coaches, whatever it is, whoever you need to go and see and speak to. Speaking is definitely the right thing, but please speak to the people that know how to help you.
Yeah.
Not just Brenda or Karen. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is there are so many more people that do the catastrophizing and the suffering rather than those that go, oh, I love a problem. Mm-hmm. Those elite few that go, I love a problem, are often the ones that end up in front. They're the serial entrepreneurs that end up doing really, really well. And a lot of that can come from resilience. And the resilience comes from the 299 problems instead of the 99, like we mentioned before. So, and most of that as well, most of our beliefs and the way we behave and the way we act, when people go, oh, this is a catastrophe, the chances are they were brought up in that same environment. They were brought up and the smallest thing would happen and one of the parents would go off on one and flip the table and be like, oh, I can't believe this has happened. And that's just been passed down. So Marissa Peer, she created a kind of therapy called rapid transformational therapy. She taught Tony Robbins rapid transformational therapy, and he uses it in a lot of his seminars. And she said, actually, 99% of pain comes from our childhood. 99% of our behaviors come from our childhood and come from our beliefs, the stories that we tell ourselves. And she said the most dangerous story that we tell ourselves, you can often get like a surface level problem, like, I'm not very good at X, insert whatever X may be for you.
Yeah.
But actually, when you whittle all the way down to the deep core belief, she says the number one belief that causes so much pain and suffering is, I'm not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough what? Not enough to be loved. Which, again, for the vast majority of people, is a false belief. One of my sisters passed away by way of suicide 2 years ago in 3 days. 2 years ago on Thursday. It's the anniversary on Thursday. And if you believe Marissa Peer's studies, and she's one of the best in the world, you've got every reason to believe that I'm not enough. That's the core belief. That's the reason that she ended up passing away. Well, I stood up to do a eulogy at the funeral, and the church was packed. Not only was it packed, there was people queuing outside. There was too many people to get in, all crying desperately because they all really, really loved her and really missed her. But yet her belief, false belief, was, I'm not enough to be loved.
Yeah. Well, you can see how that can really like dictate everything. It's something I see a hell of a lot as well. I believe as humans, we're actually only looking for one thing, and that's love. That's what we're actually searching for. And then on top of that, I think there's a requirement for growth within the human biology, which is that sense that we don't really understand what it is. That sense when we know we're not in the right place, we could be doing more, we should be doing this, that, and the other. And I've spent a long time studying, going all the way back to try and research. Probably near 5 years now, I've spent researching the human mind and body just to see actually what's happening. I've researched Marissa Peer's and all her stuff, done her courses, the hypnotherapy courses and everything else. What an amazing woman. And some of the stuff she does, and it's actually quite a lot of it's for free out there if you want to search for it, is amazing. And one of the things I think, if I was to boil down what I learned in 5 years of spending 2 hours every single day researching one of the top people in the world in their industry fields, what would it be? And it's that we're all looking for love and we all need to progress. Now, here's where it comes in. One of the tricky bits is, what do you progress on? Where do you progress to? What do you progress in? From what I can see, it doesn't really matter. You'll get as much enjoyment out of making a ham sandwich as you will do by closing a deal. It's just what it means to you. It's what it means to you. So you came into something before when you were talking about the death of your sister and this false belief that I'm not good enough. What other false beliefs do you see happening out there which are causing people no end of problems?
Oh, the list is huge, isn't it? Just whenever anyone says these two words, so this is what's really cool. So from a really young age, when my son has said these two words, my oldest son is 10 now.
Yeah.
And whenever he said them, I said, that's the real swear word. So you can probably guess what's coming, the real C word. I can't. Whenever someone says I can, it's almost never true.
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard someone say, I can't float off into the sky unaided because of gravity? No one says that, right? We don't get mad about things that we can't control.
Yeah.
We often get mad about things that actually we can control. So it's like, I can't cook. You definitely can. You 100% can. I couldn't start my own business. You could. I can't get a promotion or a pay rise. You could. I can't afford that house. You could.
Yeah.
It's almost every single time we use those two words, it's a complete limiting belief. It's our imagination. And what's really cool about that is you can program and condition yourself. Like I said, with Matthew, he's 10 years old. He never says those words anymore, ever. They don't come out of his mouth. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So now we're passing on the same with my 4-year-old and 2-year-old. And the same thing, they're starting to catch themselves. The 4-year-old specifically still says it, but she catches herself and then says, I can do anything.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest ones. I can't do whatever. And it's almost never true. That's probably the biggest one that I catch people with.
Yeah. So we need to be searching for solutions. So it's not a case of I can't, it's how can I? Might
Mm,
look difficult right now. It might look unattainable, unachievable based on what you know right now. But what can we do to take that next step? What could we do to move us that 1% closer than we were today? Has surely got to be the best way to go forward with it then.
for sure, yeah. And where you said there's two things that we want, love and progress.
Yeah.
Progress is what makes us happy. And goals, this comes back to what Ian says about a plan and goals. Goals give us something to progress towards.
Yeah.
So when you're really clear on what it is that you want and you've done the work like Jim Rohn suggested to the waitress in Denny's, and you've got really clear on what it is that you want, every time you make progress now, you're going to get that success accelerator. You're going to get that hit of dopamine or whatever it is that's going to make you feel great about that sense of achievement.
Yeah.
Then on the other side, understanding that you don't need to achieve to be loved, though. That's just men and women with no vision perish, right? Straight out of the Bible, written 2,000 years ago. So we've got to have a vision. Otherwise, we start perishing. And how often do we see that? Boxing Day, the day that most people die in ICU in the calendar year. And how often do we hear the story of?
Why is that true? That really Boxing Day is is it because of hope, basically, and
Holding on for
got rid
Christmas.
of everything? Wow, I didn't know that stat. That's quite scary, isn't it?
How often do we see the story of someone that says, "Oh, we got the call, we rushed into the hospital, and just as we got to the bedside and said goodbye, they let go."
Yeah.
Men and women with no vision perish. So it's really useful to have a goal and it gives you a life of fulfillment and a sense of achievement. Just caveat that, find some balance with, you don't need to achieve to be loved.
Yeah.
It's worth achieving for you, but you don't need to do it to be loved. And by the way, no one loves you more when you achieve anyway. Doesn't get you any extra love.
Yeah.
So I think it's finding the balance between those two things. And that's what there's a lot of wise people spent a very long time trying to find that balance throughout their lives.
Yeah.
I think as well in this day and age, dopamine is a word which I think has got a lot to see for these results, because it's very easy to get dopamine hits these days in anyday life, socials or just general, general speaking. It's very easy to just constantly have that little win, whether it's a coffee, whether it's a cigarette, it's a drug, social media, it's you walk in and you fill up your car and all of a sudden it's just dopamine, 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 whether you want a lottery ticket, whether you want a cigarette, whether you even want your car to smell nice, or you just want a Mars bar. Like, it's everywhere. And as a direct result, I think that means that people constantly want to be in that state of kind of like hit, 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 which is also not quite healthy for people. I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about Dan Bilzerian, who, if anyone's kind of seen Dan Bilzerian, is that like wild child guy that's always got loads of women with him, guns, multi-millionaire. He's always on a yacht. But he's now talking
I saw a
about
picture of you, James, on his yacht.
yeah, we got the invite next week. But he's been going through this phase at the moment where he's realized he's lived his life with too much dopamine. It's actually affecting him mentally now. So he's umming and ahhing about spending 6 months working as an Amazon shelf stacker to reset his hedonic wheel, to bring him back a level to a point where he can then enjoy life again, because now he's numb to everything because he's been so supercharged by the dopamine out there. And I think sometimes that's something that people, we're getting quite deep in this conversation, but I think that's something that people need to be aware of, is that kind of almost artificial world that we live in now. Sometimes a reset is very important. And I just wonder, with some of these kind of C-suite level, high level people that you coach through Action Coach and some of the other stuff, is that sometimes a problem that you see for the hyper successful people? And the reason why I asked that, James, is because you're wearing the cap for acquisition.com for Alex Hormozi. And Alex Hormozi is a very successful person, but I massively disagree with most of what he says, because he's a unique character in the fact that he's obsessive with work, and he wants to, I think is it Bill Gates? No, it's not. It's Warren Buffett. He's almost following Warren Buffett's chart and he's now talking and tracking that he's more wealthy than where Warren Buffett was at his age. He's very obsessed with the wealth element of things, which makes me worry for him as an eventual parent. And it makes me worry for him that actually, in where he's obsessive, it's unhealthy. And I just wonder whether the word balance comes into some of the coaching that you see for these C-suite people. You mentioned the client that brought 9,000% revenue. And then we talk about happiness. And then we talk about the classic people that are in the heart attack unit in their 50s are C-suite level people that didn't get enough sleep, obsessed with work, and didn't live life properly. So just flipping it back round to the sort of area that we're in, is that something that people you feel at that level also need to be coached through from a life coach perspective?
For sure. So this is what I was referencing in terms of finding the balance between having the goal and the purpose, and then feeling loved and feeling enough. And it's a delicate balance between the two. There's, plenty of the Eastern religions focus heavily on this. Buddhism, when people are amateurs in their studies when it comes to Buddhism, they cling on to the be present, be in the moment. When we're going to the future, anxiety, when we're going to the past, depression, be present, be really in the moment. But actually, when you look deeper into Buddhism, they have two big focuses. Number one, be present. And number two, find the balance of having a purpose and a vision to move towards. That's not easy. That's much easier said than done. And it's not just the super high level C-suite. So when we're saying, oh, we're going to step down from being a multimillionaire and being on the yachts into Amazon, I promise you there's still a lot of dopamine hits in an Amazon warehouse. You've still got your phone next to you. Imagine this. You don't need very much money to go and walk into a casino and put a tenner on the roulette. So most people in the casino are doing what? They're drinking. So they're getting dopamine from the drink. Some of them were taking drugs. Some of them were getting dopamine from the roulette and the gambling and whatever else. And some of them were even checking the phone and checking social media and taking the selfies and going, look at me in the casino. Wow, that is dopamine overwhelm, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we can still get it even on the warehouse floor in Amazon. I met a good friend of mine. Well, she wasn't a good friend of mine at the time. I met a woman called Mary Ruddick in Fiji last year. And Mary is a really interesting character. The first time I saw her, she was glowing. And there was about 150 of us in Fiji. And people were gravitating towards her. She just has this incredible aura about her. So I got chatting to her, and she told me what she did, and she's got 3 or 4 different businesses. One of them is a business taking Netflix into these tribes that she spends a lot of time with, indigenous tribes. So what I was just about to say is, it's not just in the boardroom, this is also in the warehouse. It's pretty much everywhere on earth, but there are some people that have cracked this nut. They are out there, and there is the information out there, and Mary's found them. So she goes out to these tribes for 6 months a year, and she spends time with them. And how an archaeologist is trying to dig to find out how we lived 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 years ago, she's living with the tribes that are living how we used to live 100,000 years ago. So that's one of her companies. Another one is she's a nutritionist, really high end. So if you've got a terminal disease, they're the only people that she'll help. She's quite high end, so it's about $5,000 to join one of her programs, but she's never lost anyone. These are people that have been sent home from the hospital. There's nothing we can do from you. She's never lost anyone, and all that through nutrition, which is interesting, isn't it? And talk about putting good stuff in our environment. So I ended up in Dublin at the same time as Mary with another one of our friends. We all caught up and, had a steak in Dublin, and then our friend has got 100 acres of land over in Mayo, which is the other side of Ireland. It's northwest. It's about a 4-hour drive. So we get in the car and we drive over for the weekend because all of us are all done with work and keynotes and whatever else. We drive over to Mayo. So I'm just picking Mary's brain. Like, I'm just trying to take everything from her, asking her so many questions, as you probably would as well, about these indigenous tribes. And she was saying basically there's no diabetes, no cancer, there's no heart disease, there's no depression. They don't have a word. Most of by the way, these tribes are not just in Africa and South America. She's right now, I spoke to her a couple of days ago, she's in Greenland. So literally from the top to the bottom of the earth. She spent time with the Mayans in southern Mexico. And she was saying, no matter where they are on the globe, very, very few of them even have a word for suicide. It's not a thing. They're like, it's harmony. It's joyous when you go and see these people. She said the kids don't have tantrums.
Yeah.
And I asked her, my daughter, who I mentioned earlier, Lily, who's 4, was born 10 weeks early she was 10 weeks premature, and she was born in Palma, Spain, on accident, not on purpose. And I said to her, but what would they have done with Lily? Because she was tiny. She was 3 pounds. She wouldn't have survived, right? She said she wouldn't have been born early. She said it's really, really rare that they have any miscarriages or early death, cot death. She said it's like a unicorn. It's like seeing a unicorn. And I said, so why? And she said, because we've not got any of the dopamine. We've not got any of the... So actually, instead of going to the warehouse, you'd be better off going out, spending some time with these indigenous tribes. There's none of these big, horrible, addictive behaviors. There's none of this food that's going in our body. I mean, she hates sugar. She's just like sugar's biggest enemy. She's like, there's no sugar. They're not putting sugar into the bodies. They're eating naturally. They're living naturally. The way the relationships work, there's this masculine and feminine energy thing. She was like, everything's how it's always been. And with that comes this euphoria. Now, she's been doing this for nearly 20 years. So I said to her, how long did it take to figure this out? She said, like 3 months. So then why have you been doing it? Why did you carry on for another 19 years and 9 months? And she said, well, I figured out that they were living in harmony and how we could all do it within 3 months. But the world's not going to go back. Not unless there's some massive disaster. The world's not going to go back. So what I've spent the last 19 years, 9 months doing is trying to take things from their society that we can implement in ours so that we can feel that feeling of peace and love. And that, again, to wrap it up and close the loop, is one thing that they are not shy on. They're not restrictive with their love. They're not restrictive with their gratitude. There's no mind games and head games that you often see early on in a relationship, like not texting back and all that kind of stuff. It's just bliss and harmony. It's how we're supposed to be. And she calls it coming home.
Love that. I have to get me a plane ticket to this place. So this podcast and all that lot, guys. I'm off, I think. That just sounds amazing to me. Can you get someone fishing for me and cooking and stuff like that?
It's all part of that process. It makes sense. It's the reason why I asked the question, James, is, you know, not negativity towards the cap you're wearing, but just to highlight the point that where we would see someone like an Alex Hormozi that everyone looks at and puts on this pedestal, when you actually kind of deeply go into the narrative of what's being said now that he's kind of opened up more on podcasts, there's a lot of unhealthy comments being said in there, and that will come back. And I'm sure the Alex Hormozi that we see on social media is a very different character to probably what's at home. Successful, yes, in business, but
He's just got to get the other side of the coin, right? He's got to get that other side of the coin. He's done the success and the achievement. Now you've got to get the other side. And where we're saying he's measuring track for track against Warren Buffett, I mean, number one, Warren Buffett's been the most, we talked about consistency, he's been the most consistent in history, in his industry, which is why he's on top. But actually, if your story is, I'm beating Warren, that guy is so driven to achieve, there is probably a huge hole, and that huge hole is probably this feeling of being loved. And I see that very regularly. It's not 100%, but I see so many high performers and achievers achieving because it was a condition that came up in their childhood. If I achieve, I'll get noticed and parents will love me more. And how often do we see that? If you take the kids to the sports clubs, there's always that one parent who's screaming at the top of the voice, come on, tackle him, get him. It's destroying.
Ian's eyebrows are raised. He's like, yeah, that's me.
It's disastrous and it's catastrophic, because here's the thing with this whole paradigm about feeling unloved. We as parents are doing everything to try and make the kids feel loved. So even when the silly example that I use of this is when people say son or daughter, Terry. I'm going to pick a completely random name so I don't insult any parents. Hopefully none of you have got kids called Terry. So, Terry, brush your teeth. Your teeth stink. You've not brushed your teeth today. You can't go to school like that. Your teeth stink. So as parents, why are we saying that? Because we really love that child and we do not want them to get bullied. Like, that's the last thing in the world. I don't want them to go into school with yellow on your teeth, stinky breath and get bullied and get picked on and someone says something mean. Oh, shudder thinking about it. But what does the kid hear? What does Terry hear? He hears,
Smelly breath.
Mum doesn't love me because my breath stinks. I need to brush my teeth so Mum loves me. That's the subconscious story that they're telling themselves and then continue to do so. So when you have the, come on, tackle him, Dad doesn't love me unless I tackle him. And then what happens when they miss the tackle, by the way? Unloved. And it happens all over the world, all day, every day, except in these tribes. I'm sure there are other areas of life where people have cracked this nut, but it really is few and far between. And that's how dangerous it can be. Our intention is good as a parent, but their perception is, I'm not loved. So one of the most common follow-up questions I get when I make that statement is, okay, so what do you do? Just let your teeth, kid, have stinky breath? No, be active instead of passive. Passive is, they've come in, they've not brushed their teeth, and you go, your breath stinks, you've not brushed your teeth, you should really brush your teeth. Should, by the way, doesn't change anything, does it? That word should, that's another one we should delete. It doesn't change anything. Kids shouldn't have cancer. People shouldn't fly planes into Twin Towers. But just because we've said it should or shouldn't happen doesn't change the fact that it did. Mm-hmm. So, and it's really passive. You should brush your teeth more. The active version of that is, let's go brush teeth. What I've not said in that statement is you. Let's go brush your teeth because your breath stinks. It's time to brush your teeth. It's time to go and do the teeth now. Done. And then if they're procrastinating, Terry, come on, teeth time. There's that little bit of authority, making sure that they actually do it, but I'm not going, you stink.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. That's the active part that's just so powerful. And also as well, not going OTT on the rules. Because the more rules you have for your kids, the less they'll listen. And Tyson Fury in the documentary, I very rarely watch Netflix or anything like that, but I watched the first episode of Tyson Fury's documentary. And in it, Tyson's being super strict with his daughter. He's like, go and get changed now. You look like X. What does she hear? And she says, when Tyson's gone, to the camera, she says, strict parents create rebellious kids. Kids that lie. So I'm not saying don't have any rules for the kids, but I'm saying, again, there's a balance. 0 rules is over here. That's not healthy. They need some boundaries. Too many rules is over here. They'll feel unloved and they'll stop listening to your rules. There's a nice balance here in the middle.
Yeah.
Get really clear on what you think is important and then be active and not passive. And try not to say, you stink. You don't tidy your room. You're not very good at that. Try not to impose them beliefs on him. And ultimately, our number one job as parents is if I can get all 3 kids to the age of 21 without too many battle scars and limiting beliefs and them feeling loved, I've done my job. Whether they're successful or not, it doesn't matter. If I can get them to 21 feeling loved, feeling enough, and feeling fulfilled, job done.
Yeah. The rest will write itself. Because that's the foundation we're talking about there, isn't it? Really, Wow, I love that.
Goes to those mental prints, doesn't it? You talk about the word should versus shouldn't. The brain only hears the main part. Only hears the main part. And I remember growing up in my mum's ensuite, she had a plaque, like a real kind of old school plaque, which read, "Parents that praise their children raise children with confidence." And it's something that I always remember kind of every time you went in the ensuite for a shower, if you didn't want a bath, that I sort of read it. And it's obviously just been ingrained in me from time after time of going in that room. And I do notice it hugely. And sometimes me and my wife will bring each other up on it. If you are trying to be negative, like the teeth cleaning thing is a great example of putting a negative or a positive to it. Let's go clean the teeth because we want them to be nice and shiny versus let's go clean the teeth because no one likes anyone with yellow teeth. Just two same instructions, but totally different ways of explaining them that will have a huge impact in that individual moving forward and how it's done. And you can bring the same into the workplace. You can bring the same into a relationship. Do I look good in this dress? As a husband, you are in trouble if you do not get that answer right. And there is no way of getting that answer right.
Yeah.
But there is. And that's the way we go through life, is a change of the wiring has to just look at things slightly different. So It was really interesting listening to that, because if you go back to watching anything from Super Nanny, when she goes in and she tries to fix the household, it's all about the problem kid. The problem kid. Kids are not the problem, right? It's the parents that were the problem.
Mhm.
And it's the same when when the guy goes in to fix the dog, or the crazy guy that does the cats on Channel 5. It's always the parent, the owner, isn't it, that kind of needs changing, not the animal or the child. And very much the same for bosses, I would think. There's often, Dave, you talk about that actually quite a lot. You talk about your business that you went into. You never change the staff. You never, a lot of people go in, they'll rip out the team, don't they? It's the first thing they do, rip out the team, put their own people in. You see it with football clubs. I'm a big football fan. Managerial staff go in, rip out the squad. But deep down, it doesn't need to be that way. And I think you did the same thing with your business. You just changed the rule book to make it beneficial to the business.
I believe so. I mean, we're looking at fixed and growth mindsets here. I'm a huge growth mindset, hence why we're all talking here today. But I honestly believe that anybody can do anything. The only thing that's holding them back is their belief system. If somebody's done it, then it's possible. So when I work, and I've worked with teams and trained teams for huge corporate companies over the years, before I even set eyes on the estate agency business, which is the one that you're talking about. So I've always had this fundamental belief that I don't give a shit who you are. You come with me and you listen to what I'm telling you, and we follow this down. I will give you the belief in yourself. And once I've given you that, you're off. Most people think the biggest problem in business is everyone's so blindsided to the fact that they think they're right and nobody else is. The toxic environments in the workplaces, the hierarchy of bosses, and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I just believe that a lot of people, whilst we're on this business subject, there's a really cool thing. Create the brand so the brand is bigger than any person within the establishment. And then it's the question of, what does the brand require? Go forward. That's what it is. Once you take away the toxicity, which is kind of what we were talking about with talking to the children, how we do it. Once we take away any hierarchy, any toxic behaviors, and then we start to look at the staff and treat them like humans and say, okay, this person just needs a bit of direction, a bit of love, a bit of hand-holding. And once they start making their own achievements, that's it then. They're going to have their own fuel to take them, and they won't need my help anymore. So when I come from that school, I believe that that's how everybody should be and could be. But unfortunately, we live in a world where it's seemingly polar opposite to what I've just said.
And it links it right back to one of the first things that we spoke about, which is whether it's the parents with the kids in the teeth, whether it's the boss with their team and their management style. 99% of those people are just drifting.
Yeah. They're just floating around, aren't they? Getting battered from pillar to post.
Yeah.
They haven't wrote a plan of, this is how I want to speak to the team. They haven't wrote, most people, the two most important things for me that we'll ever do is be in a relationship and be parents. And how many people study those areas? Like really study them.
Yeah.
Study in depth, not one book. Go and read all the books for 6 months that you can possibly find. Go do the courses, go find who's the best speakers in the world on this subject and go and study them.
Yeah.
Imagine what a difference that would make. But yeah, it's the most important thing we'll ever do. No one ever studies it. And that goes back to drifting, doesn't it? And we're just drifting through life. And most people say, well, I'm a really good parent. Based on what? You love the kid. We all love the kid, but sometimes our intention doesn't turn out as the same as their perception. And that's really challenging and hard to hear. But actually, you're a few books from reading away from being one of the best parents on the planet because nobody studies it.
Yeah.
So it's just a few small tweaks. Same thing with management. Most people, this happens all the time in sales, right? So I saw this in my estate agency. I was guilty of this in my estate agency, right? I went from doing the viewings and answering the doors to being a director at one of the biggest estate agencies in the UK, earning 6 figures in 5 years. In my 20s, still in my 20s. And I was just kept getting promoted, but I'd been good at sales. That didn't mean I was going to be good at management. How often do we see that? The best salesperson gets the management job, but they're two completely different skills. Yeah, and there's no deliberation to go, okay, I better study management and leadership now. I better study the greats in this area and study the guys that are really helping people perform. So that's kind of the loop, isn't it? We see that with Hormozian is this desperate thing to beat Warren Buffett. Why? I'm not loved. But actually, like I said, if you can get clear on what you want, Spend some time working on yourself so that you feel happy and fulfilled now, and love yourself and feel loved and feel enough and all that good stuff. Life's going to be completely different. And then from there, it's just have a plan. Get clear on what you want, build the plan, work the plan. Step 4 is probably the most important one. And this is where, again, where I see a lot of people drift off. Very few people know what they want. Even fewer write a plan and put pen to paper. When you put pen to paper, you solve half the problem. Even fewer then work that plan that they've just wrote. They put it in the shelf and forget about it. But not very many persist.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Keep going.
Keep going, because it's going to get tough. It's going to get challenging. Like I said right at the beginning about these achievement lists, and it's, oh, we had to overcome this big hurdle. Yeah. What you're saying there is you persisted. You carried on going when it got tough. Consistency is turning up every day. Persistency is pushing through when it's difficult. Yeah. And if you can do those 4 things, clear on what you want, write the plan, work on the plan, and then persist when it gets tough, and course correct all the way there, because that plan's not going to work, by the way.
Yeah.
Course correct all the way there. Like you both have mentioned this. I am a firm believer that anyone can achieve anything.
Yeah.
Those 4 things are really simple. Doesn't mean they're easy though.
Yeah.
But it does take control, stop you drifting, and causes intention and deliberation. And that's one of the keys to achievement.
The reroute thing is very interesting, and it's funny because we drove up north to pick up my wife's new car this weekend. Drove back on Saturday night, and drove back on Saturday night. And on the GPS, on the map, there's this weird dotted line coming from the car. So obviously you've got the nav, you know, the route you're going down, mainly down the M6, boring as hell, and it was raining. But there's this dotted line. I said to her, I wonder what that dotted line is. And then I kind of zoomed out of the map and I realized that it was as the crow flies. So on the map was the fastest way to get home, which looked like that, you know, snaking all around. That was the quickest way to get to the destination. But sometimes you were going so far off track, you were almost going the alternate way to as the crow flies.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when we're kind of talking about this, it made me think of it, because people want to go the shortest route, the quickest route as the crow flies to the destination, to the goal, to the vision, to whatever you're trying to achieve. When actually the quickest way in this case is the motorway, and you have to go off track to stay at the fastest route to the goal. And that's pretty much life, right? I think is it quite a cool way to summarize it. Yeah.
There's 2 great things to add on there. Number 1 is when you're in that car and you put the end goal in, you put the address that you want to turn up. That's the end goal. Now, if you're driving along in the sat nav and there's a road closure or there's bad traffic, the sat nav might redirect you, i.e., course correct, which is what you've just been talking about there, Ian. So the plan might change, but the goal didn't. Mm-hmm. You didn't change the destination. So the goal needs to stay the same, which is why you need to spend, which is the second point, spend considerable enough time to go, I definitely want this. And ask yourself this question. When you start getting clear on that goal, go, am I willing to go through hell to get this? And if the answer is no, keep searching for the new goal. Yeah. I'm not saying you have to go through hell, but there will definitely be some challenges. And then that's why when in Ikigai and in the Hindus have got this with Dharma, that's why there has to be that bit of, I like doing this and I'm good at doing this. Because if you don't like doing this and you're not good at this, when it gets tough, it's easy to quit.
Yeah.
What happens when you like doing it is sometimes you go, well, the result's not even as important. I'm just going to enjoy doing this. Mm. And that changes the game, because the man that loves walking will walk so much further than the man that walks for the destination.
Yeah. Well, I love that. You're coming out with some absolutely belting little one-liners here for our content, James.
Thank you. Throw those into Opus and see what comes out. You'll get a 90
What was it? You know, you made me think about the what was the best piece of business advice, Ian, that I ever received? And I know that you know what it is because you sent it to me, and it was about goals. Do you remember what it was?
The best piece of business advice to me?
No, best piece of motivational advice, not business advice. It was. I think he said, make goals that big that most people get scared, but you get a semi on.
Oh, I
then
sent
get
it to
to
you,
work and fucking get it done. I think it was something along those lines. And
make goals,
make goals, there, mate.
Make goals so big that other people laugh at you, but you get so excited you get a semi and then get to fucking work.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Love that. James, thank you for coming on. What's the best place for people, you know, to follow you on socials or check out your content? Obviously, you're super active. You're into your marketing as well, which we love. So, what's the best locations, platforms for people to check you out?
On Instagram, at James Burke Coach. Our website for business coaching is manchester.actioncoach.co.uk. And the big website for the big events that we do, that David mentioned earlier, is masteryourlifeevent.com.
Masteryourlifeevent.com.
There's one coming
And
up, I think, isn't there, in May? A new event in Liverpool.
We're back in the Northwest. We're in Liverpool on May 25th and 26th for the 2-day event. And then we're going to stay in the Northwest for the next one. We're going to go to Wigan on September 20th before probably doing London at the back end of the year. So a few big ones coming up.
Perfect. Perfect.
love that. Thank you.
Yeah, James, thanks a lot for your time, buddy. And yeah, you enjoy the rest of your day, mate. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful for you coming on today.